minutes to join us here, and we'll get started around 12 o'clock. Thanks. All right, we'll give people just about 30 more seconds to join. We're so excited to have you guys on the line to learn about IntelliSWAUT with us today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Sun Technologies' first webinar on IntelliSWAUT. We have some exciting things to share with you today, so stay tuned. My name's Heather Johnston, and I'm going to be your host for this afternoon. I'm the head of sales and marketing for the US region here at Sun Technologies, where we are a leading provider of IT services. Today, I'm joined by my three panelists, Bala, our chief architect, Vaidi, one of our cloud architects and DevOps experts, and Kishore, our head of automation and QA solutions architect. We're so excited to be presenting a demo today on Sun Technologies' exclusive scriptless automation testing tool that we call IntelliSWAUT. Now, just a little housekeeping before we get started. You will notice that you are all muted for this webinar, but we want this to be an interactive experience for everyone. So if at any time you have questions during the presentation, please go ahead and type them into the question box that's located on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll be interacting with our panelists live throughout the webinar so that we can get your questions answered. We'll also save some time at the end of the presentation for a little more Q&A. And if we run out of time and your question hasn't gotten answered, please don't worry. We'll be sure to follow up with everybody after the webinar to get all questions answered. There's also going to be a chat function on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, so please feel free to interact with our panelists throughout the webinar. Like I said, we want this to be a fun and interactive experience for everyone. So moving on to our agenda, I'm going to start by giving you guys a brief overview of Sun Technologies before passing the mic over to my team of panelists to go over IntelliSWAUT, present some success stories, and then we'll wrap up the webinar with a little Q&A. So with all that being said, let's jump right in. Perfect. So founded in 1996, Sun Technologies is a minority and women-owned IT services company headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Our global footprint extends from North America to Europe and Asia. We help mid-sized to Fortune 500 companies with their IT strategies and projects through our process orientation mindset, which stems through our ISO 9001 certification and compliance to CMMI Level 3 standards. Combining that process with our on-site offshore delivery model, we help clients get their projects done at a higher quality, in less time, and with significant cost savings. So now that you know a little bit about us, I'll go ahead and pass the baton along to my colleague Bala and let him jump right into IntelliSWAUT.
Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you for setting the stage. And we have a poll. Let's begin today's webinar with a poll. Just a quick ground check on knowing you guys, especially the audience. Just help me with this poll. Are you a decision maker, a tester, planning to implement test automation, or looking for a career change? To move into test automation, whether you're a manual tester or a business analyst or what have you today. If you're looking for a career change to test automation. So please, help me by, submitting your poll so we can set the right stage. So while you're submitting the, poll, just wanted to, throw it out there where, today we are trying to address some of the common test automation challenges that the industry is facing and how our tool, IntelliSWAUT, is going to help mitigate those challenges and excel, in your day-to-day job. So we'll just give, give some time for the poll to come up. All right. So looks like the poll is out. We are seeing about 40% who are planning to implement test automation, about 30% are testers, about 20% are decision makers. So fair enough, nobody's looking to change career to test automation. That says everybody is a test automation engineer today. So good. So let's move on. So let me talk about Sun Technologies a little bit. We are a consulting services provider, and we are an IT services provider. And on the QA side, we have a centralized COV, and it's extremely mature. It has automated process across the entire SDLC. We have a dedicated lab that hosts multiple devices on iOS and Android platform. We do infrastructure, provide infrastructure as a service so that we can provide various mobile-based testing and app-based testing, for our clients. And it's pretty well established. We are a US company, as Heather mentioned, and we also have our offshore dedicated center, which has QA testers. So we give a career path to our testers. So when we onboard, our testers, we just don't treat them as just testers. We treat them as one of the subject matter experts who understand the business domain and technology, and we promote them into digital quality assurance. So we provide digital quality assurance to our customers. All our customers are moving to digital transformation. They are moving into modernized, set of applications, whether it is to the cloud or whether it is on-prem on a modernized Java, Angular stack, or C# or .NET for that matter. So we provide consulting services where we handhold our customers throughout the journey. The second is the core testing. We do cloud, mobile app, test automation, accessibility, which is the ADA compliance testing predominantly in the US because we are a US-based company, and 90% of our customers are US-based. And we do provide game testing too. Very interesting, isn't it? Non-functional testing is also part of it. Performance testing, API, security, data validation, and usability testing. So with that being said, this is our core competency, as an organization. We provide people, we provide process, we also provide technology. Of course, the agenda for today is IntelliSWAUT. It's a homegrown tool, and we are trying to address some of the traditional test automation challenges that encompass people, process, and technology. So let's in general talk about application leaders and QA managers and QA testers. What are the general problems that they're facing? So if you have to look at it, building an automated test is a complex process because you have to code and you have to find the right skills from the market. It requires tool addition, framework building, too complex today. Application leaders are also not prepared, for the impact that moving to an automated software testing, will have an impact on the development practices. But application leaders have to think that it's also an investment to make sure that you have the right product quality. You don't have any defect escapes in production. So some of the common challenges is, expat identification if you're, using Selenium IDE or Selenium, coding technology or framework. Adding pages to classes, elements to the page, that's on the people side. You have to have skill sets, you have to have the development mentality. Developers feel that testers or test automation engineers don't know how to write code. And test automation engineers think that, developers are not writing a great code. So there's a common tussle and friction between the teams. You don't want that in an agile environment. From a process standpoint, all the CIOs that I have spoken to and we have interacted with want an improvised process. There was one CIO who, when I was doing my consulting, he said, this analogy where developers write code, they develop bugs. The testers write code as part of automation test, and they find bugs. Everybody is developing bugs and finding bugs. Who's going to resolve that? And how early can you resolve it? I don't care when you resolve it. I just don't want that in production. It's an additional cost. And so that's the process part of it. And then the technology part of it comes, tool identification and framework. So when we started in 2014, and I'm taking 2014 as just an example, but when we started, right in the midst where, Selenium was getting matured, UFT was getting matured, there was framework around, Ranorex and a few other tools, we had record and playback as a standard. If you look at the general enterprise market, even when Gartner did this analysis, they felt that about 60 to 65% of the market throughout the world were actually doing record and playback. Can you believe that? Then we were not doing record and playback. We were actually writing framework and code on top of it. But a lot of customers had record and playback, so we were providing services to them. So we were also meant to follow record and playback. But as we started looking improvisations in 2016, we started seeing more acceptance for data-driven, keyword-driven framework. In 2018, we gave birth, or everybody started accepting hybrid test automation framework, which is the mix of data-driven and keyword-driven framework. Now, having said that, when we built the SWAT framework, which is the mother of IntelliSWAUT, it was a low-code automation framework. Our job was to make sure that we bridge the gap between developers, testers, and business analysts. So nobody has to have the friction. They can easily, take part in the orchestra of software development lifecycle and make sure that they can work seamlessly. Developer does his job or her job, testers do their job, the ops team and the business analysts and the business users get their job done. At the end of the day, you want to look at a complete product which has 0 defects or probably less defects which are not showstoppers, right? So Agile, DevOps, Cloud, bridging the gap among various stakeholders were some of the key initiatives between 2018 and 2019 that we were trying to solve. And that gave birth to the scriptless, or I would say no-code automation IntelliSWAUT, which means you don't have to be a Java expert, a .NET expert, a C# expert. You just have to know your business. You just have to know the application and the data in a very proper way, in such a way that you can actually develop the actions. So what makes IntelliSWAUT best out of other tools in the market? Number one, it's an all-in-one lightweight solution that's for the web application, mobile, which can do functional testing, and also API automation. So you're looking at one single enterprise solution that encompasses all the application stack, the modernized application stack as of today. We can do even client server, but that becomes a separate instance because of the nature of client server. But when you're looking at modernization, legacy modernization especially, and moving to the cloud, it's an all-in-one solution. It's also cost effective. It can run both on-prem as well as on the cloud. You can accelerate the adoption of enterprise test automation. Now, how can you accelerate that? When it's no code and when you can write your test cases seamlessly, your adoption of test automation is going to be faster, because if a manual tester can write a test case in 1 hour, you can actually build a test script within a minute for the same medium complex test case. And my colleague Kishore would demonstrate as to how to do that. It's a best fit for agile development. You can do in sprint test automation and make sure that as soon as the screen or as soon as the API is developed, you can develop your scripts within a couple minutes. Open API integration, we don't have any, the sky's the limit. We have opened all the ports. You can integrate with your third-party tools. It works seamlessly with Salesforce, Oracle eBusiness Suite, you name it. It is also extremely secured because it can work within your security standards or our security standards if you are using our SaaS-based model. It's cloud-centric, CI/CD, CTCM integration. So it overcomes all the test automation challenges. So one of the key things that we are looking for, at least for this year, is 100% test coverage, 80% reduction in the test automation scripting efforts. So having said that, I would say fuel your team with IntelliSWAUT because it overcomes the automation challenges of no multiple tools, one single tool. Rigorous scripting, coding. Time consuming, yeah, this is going to be extremely fast because you're already reducing 80% of automation scripting effort. And maintenance is very, very low. There's no complex integrations. It's one simple install, and that's pretty much it. We release, half-yearly updates, and I think, that would be, part of our presentation and as we move forward in some of our demo today. So having said that, this is the base, for the IntelliSWAUT today. So I'll just pause here. Heather, I want to see if you have any questions or getting any sort of hint from the audience.
Yeah, so we actually have an audience member that wants to confirm that this version can be used in on-premise and cloud versions.
Absolutely. It can be used within your on-premise, within your client environment or infrastructure, to be specific, and it can also be on the cloud. So yes, we have options on both.
And is parallel execution possible?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is possible because it's lightweight, and the tool itself has a setting where you can configure multiple machines through a virtual machine. You can run it within your on-prem as well as on the cloud. So for one of the customers, Heather, what we did was when we were moving their application from on-premise to the cloud, we had to test both the applications because we cannot just turn on the cloud version without turning off or turning off at the same time. So we had to run it in parallel. So we had to run the scripts on-prem and we had to run the scripts on the cloud at the same time to ensure that the testing and the data matches. And I think Kishore would do that as part of the demo today.
Perfect. Well, I think we're caught up on questions for the moment. Thanks.
Awesome. Sounds good. Let's move on to the next. Let's see what we got. Let's end the webinar, or at least my talk, with an audience poll. Before I hand over the baton to my colleague Kishore, I would like to know, and I'll request all the audience to take the participate in this particular poll. Are you using test automation as a practice in your organization? So please let me know. Based on this, we can talk about specific framework, tailor our presentation accordingly. So Kishore, once this comes on, I think you can start. So I'll just wait for the poll to complete.
And maybe while that poll's completing, Bala, you can just confirm again for our audience getting another question, that this tool does support BDD framework integration, correct?
The tool currently does not support BDD because it's more test-driven development. BDD is more of Cucumber Gherkin. I think Kishore would be the right person to answer that. But today it doesn't support that because it's on a different framework altogether. Our goal is to ensure that it is framework independent. But as of today, if you have anything Gherkin or Cucumber, we have a workaround. We have tailored it for one of the customer, but the tool itself does not have the BDD support completely. But I'll have Kishore, talk about it. Kishore, the poll is ready. I think about 63% are saying they're using test automation as a practice in their organization, which is a great news. And about 25% are not sure. So I will hand it over to Kishore. So Kishore, take it from here.
Bala, setting up the stage, and thanks for giving the intro. Okay, with all that said, before jumping on to show what is IntelliSWAUT or what is this tool all about, I'd like to spend like a couple of minutes or maybe on discussing like what is that this tool brings to everyone onto the table. So let's say I'll start with a kind of my experience or our experience with Sun Technologies. So way back, like me and Bala coming from the same portfolio or organization earlier, where we were mostly using the UFT kind of tool sets, but eventually as the open source tool set starts evolving with Selenium taking over the UFT world, it was the game changer. Then eventually, I think the latest trends, it's all about the codeless or the RPA world of things. So as we are talking towards the changes that are happening with the software changes or the environmental changes or the, for example, from the waterfall to what we are right now in the agile process, it's very important for us as an organization to be along with the change. So with that said, I think Bala also drove the direction from where we were versus like where we are right now. That brought us to actually define or invent this particular tool completely from scratch with the thought process or innovations that is there within Sun Technologies. Again, I mean, recently we were talking about the tool is all about all-in-one solution. So it's not very easy to say all-in-one solution because it's just a general keyword. Most of them try to use it, but we want to make that all-in-one as a real all-in-one solution for the automation world. So to give further details towards like what is this all-in-one solution for test automation. So let's say you are having a web application automation. You have a client-server based automation which is on Windows. You have a mobile automation that needs to be done on the architecture. So same way, there could be multiple components within that where you touch the database, you touch the API or the web services call. So these are like the complete architecture, which would cover up from database engine to the mid-level business logic layer, and also on the UI standpoint, the regular GUI automation. This particular tool has been designed and developed to actually cover up all the architecture layers from the UI to the backend databases. Whatever you have it as part of your development criteria, we can automate that using this particular tool. I think there was also a question from the client, from the participants about parallel execution. So what we have done with this is like most of the challenges with the present automation world is basically when you have the test cases automated or completed, you should have that test cases report generated as soon as it can. So that's the reason you need to have on a single system, you cannot get the results as you intended to. So you need to have that parallel distribution where you can have as many systems as possible and reduce your overall execution time to a limited time. So this particular tool has been designed, and also we have a separate engine which could run in the machines. Either it could be on-prem or on the cloud, it can run through. And one more beauty of this particular tool is a seamless integration. I think the earlier slide also Bala was covering in terms of open integration. So open integration is all about the open-ended libraries, which can cover up the integrations like Jira, ALM, Git, or Jenkins, which are the complete CI/CD pipelines which can work on. And on top of it, we were also saying this is a complete scriptless automation tool. When we say scriptless, you don't even have to write a single line of code. Everything is inbuilt within this particular tool. You just need to use the tool to automate your application. It's as simple. I think we will be seeing this in a couple of minutes. And mostly this is a parameterized driven testing where automation would be flawless with like no code implementation. And it has a lot of other benefits which would be self-explanatory, like scriptless mechanism or the database validation. And it has wide coverage with the test management tools like ALM or Qmetry. If you want to see the results once it is executed, you have that feature as well. So those are some of the high level details what this particular tool is all about. Before we jump on and see the real world of this particular tool, I just want to spend another a minute or two over what is the functional testing or the manual test cases versus how are we going to build the automation test scripts. So in the present world, like again, if you are talking about the open source tools, the Selenium world where you kind of use it for the web automation, the APM which you use for the mobile automation, and the REST service calls probably for some other libraries, and you have some Maven dependencies, all those components to do a complete automation for your applications. So what we have done with this is we have converted the manual test cases directly into an automation script. So you don't have to worry in terms of how you want to develop your automation scripts. So on a simple terminology, I think there was also a question on the BDD versus the test-driven development. So this is more on the regular test cases that are the functional testers would write. Where, let's say I'll take a simple example here. I'm taking of a hotel booking application where you launch a browser, you put in your username and password, you go into the hotel booking engine and search for a hotel that of your choice and select the hotel which you would like to stay in, and then finally book that particular hotel. So to complete that functional testing, you kind of draft or design the test cases where all the test steps would formulate more or less similar to what has been defined in my left panel. So the consequent of how the automation script is developed is what you're seeing on the right, and that's what we are going to see, how exactly this is all being developed. So while I jump onto the tool, Heather, are any questions that I can take it up, or I can jump onto the demo?
Yeah, we do have someone wanting to confirm that this tool supports mainframe and SAP applications.
Yes, we have the third-party library integration, which would support on the mainframe and DB2 testing as well. For the SAP based applications, as long as it is a complete web interface kind of automation, it could be flawless. But if there are little third-party integrations that comes with the SAP applications, we do have the WinApp or the drivers that are helping over that, but it is case-to-case basis, and we can automate the SAP based applications as well.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, thanks for that question. So hope you are seeing my screen, which shows a intelligence to the right and the IntelliSWAUT to your left, or however you are seeing the screen. So I'll spend a minute over here in terms of, let's say you are automating any application. I'll take a simple web application itself. To do that, you need to have an IDE. In case if you're developing using Selenium or Cypress or any kind of tools that you're using right now, it needs an IDE where you need to develop your automation script in a coding language. And you need to have the Java homes, Mavens, and all the dependencies loaded up, and then you can start your automation. So what we have done is, like, why do we need to give all that hassle for anyone just want to do a development on test cases? So we have come up with this interface, which is more or less like you open up your browser, put in the required URL, what is that you want to automate. I mean, if you would like to automate, and put in your username and password, and you should be directing back to just start on scripting, not thinking about whether it is Maven or it has like support on Java or things like that. So with that, so what we have done is this, we have developed this interface, which is completely logging into the web applications or the IntelliSWAUT by itself. So here you just need to put on your username that is aligned to this tool. So once you put on your username and password, we also have the provision to actually select a project. So in an enterprise, there could be multiple projects which you would be working on. So in here, whatever the project that you are aligned to, you can just select that particular project, and it can take you to the tool and tells you like, okay, you can start on the automation. So here, what we have done is we made it into a simple 4-step model for actually doing the automation. So for anything that you need to automate, it's just a 4-step model, or we can define it into a 3-step further, how to automate your application. So with that said, I'll just tell you what are this 4-step model that we are using here. The 4 steppers are settings, actions, test suites, and execution. So settings are more or less like a user creation or a project creation. Let's say you are a user, or you have multiple users that needs to work on multiple projects. This is where you create those projects and create users, enable them start using this particular tool. So once you're done with the addition of projects or addition of users, you're all set to get into your next step. Next step is where you actually start developing your automation script. So a couple of minutes back, we have seen how a manual test case was written and how are we going to develop an automation script. So here, actions is a tab where you convert the manual test cases into an automation script. So like we said, we don't have to develop even a single line of code. this particular tool have all the components built within its collections, and you can just call those collections, your script would be ready. So with that said, I don't think we have a lot of time to get into creation of script, but at a high level, I'll just take a simple login example. For everyone understanding, even to test a login application, you need to have further a few steps that needs to be performed. One is like opening up the browser, you need to enter the username, you need to enter the password, and then click on the login button. So to do all that automation, if it is like any of the tools that you are working on, you need to know the programming language. For example, if it is UFT, you have VBScript or Java kind of tool programming. Even in Selenium, you need to know Java, Python, or JavaScript, whatever the programming language that you're comfortable with. So with this tool, what we do is we have built all the defined actions or defined automation engines that are built inside this. You can just call up on open browser, just pass on the parameter needed for it. And when I say enter username, you just put on enter text. What is the username that you want to enter? The same way, if you want to enter the password, just again do the enter text, and then all the other components are in there. If you want to just log into the application and click on that login button, you already have the built-in mechanism where you can just call on the click on action, then it performs that login action. Now, while I was talking, in a minute, I created my automation script for login scenario. Same way, if you want to search for a hotel, again, it's the same approach or definition in terms of how we have built the login script. It's the same approach. For example, either you're selecting an element or sending some keys into the object or performing certain operations over that. All that are built within the system. You just need to call on the required option for it to automate it. So on top of it, we also have script. So when a couple of slides back, when we were talking about how are we striving towards getting 100% automation, this is what our invention or innovation was all about. So we don't define or we don't have a hard and fast rule. You just have to use our collections. If you're a programmer and if you would like to do a lot of program and you need to write your customized programming skill, you can always build that using the script model, where you can develop your own script in Java. This has a plugin to Eclipse directly, where you can plug the code what you want to write it in the Eclipse, click on that, and it can get loaded into the tool, and you can use that. So with that, we're actually promoting 100% automation to whatever that you would like to. Any libraries you can add up, any script that you want to develop, you can develop it. So with that said, now I have completed my manual test cases into an automation script. If you see, I have developed the script for login, I've developed the script for search, select, booking that particular hotel. You do see a couple of actions as well, some of the REST service calls, the database engines. REST service calls, like we said, the business logic, in case if the developers are on the business logic being developed on the web services, either it could be SOAP or on the REST calls. Anything can be automated using this particular tool. Once you input or submit some transaction, you want some data to be reflected into your database, and you want to verify whether the data is reflected back into your database. You can also verify, write actions to that. Mostly it is completely 100% reusable, so you can plan your development well in advance of automation, and you'll be ready on par with the development team in case if you're following the sprint or agile methodologies, what we are doing right now. So with that said, now after the user got created for a project, I have converted my functional test cases into automation script. Now is the next step. We have completed 2 steps, moving on to the 3rd step, where I have to bundle all my actions. What do you say bundle? So usually in the testing terminology, we always call it a suite, where we call like multiple test cases and frame that into a suite. This is what it is all about. Let's say you want to do all these actions, and you want to test all those actions. What we do is we club all that and check whether all those are working together or not. So likewise, what we are seeing on the screen, whatever actions that you have built, it just calls up, bundles up over in the test suite, so you can execute it. One more beautiful feature of our for this particular tool is basically it has the data-driven model built in between. So I'll take a simple example of login itself. So even for login, there could be multiple probabilities that you test with a valid user, valid password, invalid user, invalid password, and the script remains one and the same. So if you want to automate that, this is the way how it actually gets automated. And you just add on the number of rows that it has to test, and it's for all the data combinations. So now we are done with step 3 in terms of bundling, creating the user, creating the project, converting the functional test cases into automation script. Now I have stitched all my actions into test suite so that I'm ready to execute. So before I get into the execution, I would like to check with Heather if there are any questions that needs to be taken up before we jump on to the 4th step and the final step.
Perfect timing. We actually just got a question from one of our participants asking if this tool supports the integration with TestRail.
That's a great question. Absolutely, yes. So when we say it's a third-party integrator and open library integrator, we do have integrations with the ALM, which is like application lifecycle management from Quality Center. On top of it, TestRails is also part of this integration. Recently, we have incorporated to one of our clients, and it does support TestRail integration completely.
Perfect. And how about, supporting integration testing with upstream and downstream applications?
I think most of the part, whatever that I have covered in the complete architecture, it does have the support for the upstream and downstream. Even if you call it of mainframes or other downstream systems or some job processes that need to be run from here, we can always do that. Yes, we do support all the combination. And again, just to extend that answer, since this is, again, we are not restricting this tool, only use this. It has a script combination where it can be tied up easily to the additional script integration. So you can do anything that you want to automate using this tool.
Perfect. Thanks, Kishore.
On that note, Kishore, I would like to add, as part of this is actually a great question. And whenever I go to conferences or for client presentations, we do get these questions as well, Heather. So I think Kishore, what we did recently for the large financial, not financial, in fact, the insurance company based out of Wisconsin is we actually integrated the front end. A lot of people, what happens is they look at only GUI interface. If you're looking at enterprise test automation, you just look at the front end. Whatever you see is what you automate. But that's not true in our case because they had existing Selenium scripts. They had partial existing UFT scripts. We were able to integrate that and run batches, their nightly batches or their weekly batches. We were able to integrate that through their API and REST services. So there is a proper integration to not just the GUI, it's also with the API and the backend system, which includes the database. So if you want to just run database validations against a set of spreadsheets, we have the ability to do that. The second thing is, as Kishore rightly said, if you have an existing Selenium script, all the ports for us is open. From a security standpoint, of course, we are well covered. But in terms of integrations, it can integrate with your existing scripts and fine tuning, boom, you're up and running. So just wanted to add that out, saying that this is something that we have implemented as part of a solution to our customers.
Great, thanks, Paula. And we actually have sort of an elaboration on that question coming through. So they want to know sort of how this tool supports profile-based testing, such as if they're using Salesforce applications and they need to validate with some profiles, but with the same script, how can we achieve that?
For the Salesforce kind of applications, what happens is it's usually the dynamic nature of the frames that restrict it to open source tools like Selenium and other tools that are in the market. So what we have done is we have built our own algorithm, which would actually address the dynamic object mechanism or dynamic frame handling mechanism, which would be switching between the frames automatically. You don't have to write an action every time to switch between the frames. This particular tool comes up by default method, which can tell you to specific frame on how to do it. So we have that kind of support incorporated as part of this particular tool.
Perfect. Thanks, Kishore.
No problem. So with that, I think we are to the last step of how are we going to execute using this particular tool. So like we were talking, this has the mechanism which can run on multiple systems. When I say multiple systems, so again, this is the latest buzz that has been in the industry, which talks about you have the robots or RPA kind of mechanism where the robots are installed in multiple systems and that will test the process. What we have done with a similar process is we have built agents which would sit on each and every IPs what you are sitting here, and it will test the application for you. So we will see how we can trigger those IPs from this particular system, and yeah, it just acts as a robot to run your testing on those machines. Like I was talking about multiple integrations, you have everything, Jira and other, most of the integrations components are tied up into this particular tool here. Okay, with all that said, let's get into the execution. How are we going to execute the scripts? So you can select any of the test suite from the execution panel. As of now, I'm checking the test set demo, which is doing it. So here, you can actually select the machine where you want to run. Let's say the 51 IP where you have a Chrome browser, you have 163 IP where you will be running Safari, 155 IP where you are running IE. At the same time, you can actually run all the compatibility testing along with the parallel runs using this particular tool. So what I do is I'll just click on the run, then whatever the process that is there, it could be running at the background. And once the execution is done, it kind of shows up the results, what is the result all about. So if you see, as we trigger the process, it kind of changes its status from ready to run to running state. So once the state of running is completed, then you can actually see the results, what it has been completed. So on top of it, we can also switch between other projects, but while it is running, I let that browser pop up so that you can see how exactly the execution is happening on a fly. So hands up, like I'm not doing anything. It's all the system, the IntelliSWAUT system, which is doing testing all these components that are relating testing to this particular application. All the data points that are needed being loaded, executed, deployed, or being tested along with the process what has been automated so far. So if you see, once the running state is done, it go back to the ready to run state. So once the execution is done, you can kind of click on the result. The latest one would be already popped up. And you can also see each and every step, whatever that it calls, as long as it is running through fine, it kind of completes that and tells you what step it has run, what is the data parameter that it has used, along with the detailed screenshot, what it has taken for. So if you see if you have seen the action parameters, we did not even write a single line of code to represent what is the report that it has to write. Everything is inbuilt within this particular tool. You just need to write what is the operation that it has to perform, and boom, all your automation is done, and it would be completely in line to your in-sprint automation if you want to use it that way. So this is a web automation, how it looks like. On top of it, if you want to see how this mobile works, I don't think we'll have enough time to see the mobile execution, but I can switch on to the project of mobile, show you a glance of how exactly a result of a mobile would look like. So in case if there is a pass, it kind of shows up this way. If there is a failure, it kind of shows up a tag of failure and also fails that particular case. So if you see each and every step, even on the mobile scenario, this is one of the application of kind Amazon, which is very dynamic in nature, and it can actually automate all the steps that are even for iOS or Android. On top of it, if you want to run it from Sauce Labs or browser stack kind of SaaS-based tools where you can run the compatibility modes as well, we do have support. In case if there is a failure, it kind of shows up in a different color code. You can actually see why exactly it has failed along with the screenshot again. It has that level of details, and again, I'm highlighting, you don't have to write single line of code. Everything is taken care within this particular tool. With that, Heather, is there any questions that we need to take, or we can move on?
So I think we've got one last question here from our audience. So wanting to just ask how often new versions are released of the product.
That's a great question. So as of now, we are doing half-yearly releases, but as we were seeing some changes from Selenium World, where they are trying to come up with a 4 version where it could support most of the performance channels or the security channels. At that point in time, we are planning to have a quarterly release, but for now, it is on the half-yearly release.
Perfect. Got it. Thanks.
So with that said, do we have time to take one poll, Heather?
Yeah, sure. We have time to take a poll.
Awesome. Can you take up this poll? Just want to understand, are you maintaining multiple frameworks or copies or different framework for Selenium, which is like for web services or Windows versus APM, which is mobile? I say no, because we are using IntelliSWAUT for it. Okay. While we are getting the poll results, Bala, I think recently, whatever the progress that we have made. So there was one of the criteria where for one of our customer was moving from the web version to a complete mobile version. So it's a complete hybrid model where the application would run on the web. It also have a native application, both on iOS and Android. And he wanted to have a single framework which could cover web services, mobile, both in iOS and Android. And the best part was like when we had this particular tool installed in the client base, and it was like a charm. They were able to utilize that on the in sprint wise. For each and every sprint, they were able to create the automation script, test the application in case if there are any failures. Again, the maintenance is like much more easier. So it was like flawless in terms of overall deployment or development and overall results. Great. I think we have the results out. Looks like there are 60% who are utilizing multiple frameworks, and there are 30% who are not utilizing. I'm one among them. So yeah, if you are more interested on this, I think this is a great tool which can cover up and maintain everything into a single design or single framework.
And we are not surprised by these. We are not surprised by these poll results also.
Absolutely. That's why we have IntelliSWAUT, or this particular tool design with all the experience what we had.
Yep.
So I think I kind of covered up in sprint automation, how we are bringing it up. And over to you, I think this can be covered up. I think Vaidi, I'll let you take over from me, and unless Heather, if there are any further questions that need to take it up.
Nope, I think we're good to move along to automation.
Awesome. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Vaidi, who is our DevOps and cloud architect. He would be covering a couple of pointers specifically on the DevOps and cloud. Over to you, Vaidi.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kishore. Thank you, Bala. Hello, everybody. Nice meeting you all. So before even we get started about DevOps, I wanted to know the current state by this poll. What type of DevOps pipeline does enterprises prefer? When I say enterprises, it can be your organization or in general, your customers. Generally, this is a trend. There are two types where customers would prefer a cloud agnostic DevOps where they want more control on the infrastructure. They set up the infrastructure, they set up the pipeline and manage it with more control. The second one would be cloud native DevOps, which would reduce the infrastructure overhead, rather use managed service like Azure DevOps, AWS pipeline. So this has been a traditionally debatable topic where there are customers whose choice is agnostic pipeline, which could be Jenkins, udeploy, TeamCity, Bamboo. And we also have customers who are invested heavily on cloud, preferring less overhead on infrastructure and more flexibility and ease for orchestrating a pipeline. So which one do you use? Let's look at the results. Here you go. Pretty much even, I would say. We have 50% looking for cloud agnostic and 33% looking for cloud native, which is understandable. And that's how the market trend is as well. The trend is biased towards going for a cloud agnostic DevOps because they don't want to stick into a cloud. but there are equal investments happening on the native DevOps too. Let's get into the DevOps world and see how IntelliSWAUT works in out there. The one you see on your screen is a traditional DevOps pipeline. I would say this is matched to the CMMI level. This would give you what CI, what CD is, and it would also have continuous monitoring and continuous testing integrated to DevOps pipeline. The red colored box that you see is the agile practice that almost all the mature agile pods or the organizations follow. In agile, when you develop a code, let's say you take 2 sprint or a 3 week sprint, you also build automation. We saw enough about in-sprint automation on how we do same sprint automation when the development is happening. So using IntelliSWAUT, you do in-sprint automation when the team does the development. And when you check in the code for the rollout, your automation code is also checked in. Using CI/CD pipeline, what we do is as soon as there is a check-in onto the repository, a pipeline automatically gets triggered. The first half is going to be the CI, where we call it as a continuous integration process, where you run static code analysis. You also integrate your unit test case automations with the pipeline and containerize the microservices if it is a microservice, or if it is a legacy system, just keep the package ready for deployment. The CD part, which is called as continuous deployment, it can also be called as continuous delivery, where you build the artifacts and you deploy the artifacts into the infrastructure once your regression test suite is passed. And if you look at the toolset, Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity come under the cloud agnostic DevOps, where you can do multi-cloud DevOps irrespective of dependency on the cloud. Azure DevOps, Code Pipeline from AWS, Cloud Build from Google, these are a classic example of doing CI/CD on a cloud native architecture. However, it doesn't limit you to integrate only cloud resources. You can also integrate your on-prem resources to do DevOps on the cloud, just that your pipeline will reside on the cloud. So IntelliSWAUT powers a lot of customers to do in-sprint automation and to integrate the DevOps pipeline in a scalable way. The biggest question that comes here is, how am I going to run the regression test cases on DevOps? Should I integrate it or not? Let's get into the poll and talk a little bit more about how to choose whether to integrate or not to integrate your regression. So question as directed, how many of you have a regression test case integrated to your DevOps pipeline? There is a silver line of difference between integrating your unit test case automation and your regression test case automation to the DevOps pipeline. IntelliSWAUT scripts has capability to talk to both cloud agnostic as well as cloud native DevOps. We have been very mindful while designing the architecture to ensure it has integration points to any upcoming tools that has API integrations. And I know this question can be a cat on the wall question, because you'll be keen to integrate regression, but there are certain parameters which we evaluate before we recommend whether to integrate your regression suite into the pipeline or not. We have customers at enterprise level. We also have experience working with small, medium business to integrate their IntelliSWAUT scripts to their DevOps pipeline. And I see 71% of the team says yes, they have it integrated, while there are 14% which said no, they have not integrated. This is an interesting statistic, because most of the organization think twice or thrice before they want to integrate their regression suite into the DevOps pipeline, because of the timeline of execution. A regression test case can go for 3 hours or 4 hours of execution, depending on the number of test cases you have. So should a developer wait for 4 hours till he or she sees the code into the QA or into the UAT environment? We do parallel piping on DevOps. So when we integrate regression test suite on DevOps, the developer doesn't have to wait for the deployment to complete. What we do we complete the deployment, we run the regression test in parallel, and if there is a failure on regression, we notify appropriate stakeholders and roll back the deployment, which is into the critical region. For QA, we just send alert, but if it is an UAT or if it is a pre-prod, we roll it back. Looks like there's a question.
Yep, we do have a question from one of our participants wanting to know, are you able to integrate performance testing and app security scanners into these DevOps pipeline?
Absolutely. So to get you more detail on performance testing, as we told you, IntelliSWAUT doesn't do performance testing. However, it is customizable. So what we have done, we had one of the insurance company whom we work with, and they wanted to have a one-stop shop dashboard. So we were able to integrate performance test results with IntelliSWAUT. Talking about app security scanners, yes, it depends on the tool that you use. We have integrated 45 and a lot of several other tools that is available in the market. So if the tool has third-party integrations, we should be able to integrate it in DevOps, be it as cloud native or cloud agnostic.
Got you. And on a SaaS-based service model of IntelliSWAUT, how do you provide high availability?
Great question. DevOps is powering our high availability. As you all know, IntelliSWAUT is available in a SaaS model where we take care of the infrastructure and you just consume it as a software and pay as you go. So what we do, we have an infrastructure automation in place where we deploy IntelliSWAUT across multiple regions, multiple availability zones, and we also have automated the toggle switch. So let's say our data center in the East Coast goes down. Within 3 minutes, the toggle happens and the traffic is routed to the West Coast region. We do real-time replication of regions to ensure your data is well protected. And we also have additional security layers built in the name of encryption, decryption, and also as the firewall to ensure we prevent the SaaS from DDoS attacks. We promise 99.99% of availability, which means traditionally our system has been 100% available. However, the promise that we do is to ensure your system hosted on us will not go down more than 30 minutes in a year, with a promise of toggling in within 5 minutes if there is a region disaster. Hope that answered.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks so much, Vaidy. I know we've got about 4 minutes left, everybody. So if you have any last minute questions for our team before Vaidy continues, please feel free to go ahead and type those into the chat bar.
Okay, I think we have a couple of minutes. So Bala, I mean, I can bring that up in terms of how exactly this particular solution has been a unique identifier with most of our customers, and it's not by values, it's more by the customer happiness, like how we have reduced the 50% of the reduction in the time to market with the quality, because it's completely codeless, so you can just directly jump on and create your own script, and it has a lot of flexibility, what has been explained so far, and most of the customers have actually been most utilized with this particular tool. And these are a couple of case studies what we have worked through and got this best. Bala, you want to add up anything in here?
No, I think we have only 2 minutes. I would like to conclude, the webinar. Thanks, Kishore, for giving a detailed demo within a short period of time. But just for the audience sake, I'd like to tell, if you're an application leader or a QA, manager or heading the practice, I would say you have to start your test automation, initiatives with clear and simple goals. Don't complicate it, for your people. Even for the management, it might be extremely complicated. The next thing is you have to stop treating test automation as a software development project, because we are getting into the 22nd, 23rd century, and right now we want faster automation. You don't want another development project on top of a development project. Those days are gone. So IntelliSWAUT, would be the way to go. Scriptless and codeless mechanism is the way to go. You have to focus test automation on areas. Like you have to form a test automation pyramid, which is a great way to look at the business functions, the domain that actually touches the business users, the most repetitive transactions. And we don't have to spend time or waste time selecting tools in the market. You have to select tool that is scriptless, low code, or no code should be the way to go. So with that, 4 points, I would like to end our webinar, at least from my side, and then go ahead, Heather, with a thanking note, and then we can wrap it up.
Yes, thank you guys so much for taking some time today to get on this webinar and learn a little bit more about IntelliSWAUT. On this last slide here, you'll see my contact information along with my colleagues, Lowell Abraham. Please feel welcome if any questions pop up that weren't answered during the webinar to reach out to us, or if you're interested in scheduling a one-on-one session with us on IntelliSWAUT, please feel free to email us or give us a call. We hope everybody has a great day, and thanks so much again for joining our first webinar on IntelliSWAUT. Have a good day, guys.